All good. Okay.
Good. Okay. Hello, listeners. You're listening to KRUI 89.7 FM. I'm the news director, Cade Grierson, and I'm joined here today by Micheal Bridgford. Micheal Bridgford is an independent candidate running for Congress in Iowa's 1st District. According to his website, Micheal describes himself as a proud product of public schools, graduating in a class of 88 students. He worked his way through college on loans, scholarships, and an internship with John Deere. Micheal is a small business owner who was raised on a 7th-generation family farm. He's running in a race against Marionette Miller Meeks and Christina Bohannon. Micheal is running at a time when a record number of Americans, 45% according to Gallup News, identify as political independents. Mr. Bridgford, welcome to KRUI Studios.
Cade, thank you so much for having me here, and thanks for the introduction.
Of course, thank you. Can you tell me a little bit more about your upbringing and your career and how it shaped your values prior to getting involved in politics?
Definitely, yeah. So, yeah, I grew up on a 7th-generation family farm, and, we went through some hard times. I was, like I said, 41 years old, so born in 1985, so our family went through the crisis of the 80s, went into the 90s. My dad was a hog farmer, and kind of got pushed out of farming, had to make a midlife career change. Fortunately, my mom worked for the USDA, Department of Agriculture. She had a 30-year career there, and that really provided a lot of stability for us growing up. But, couldn't have had a better upbringing. Traditional Midwestern, had both of my grandparents, both sides of grandparents close by. They were, a big part of my life growing up, and both of my grandpas are still alive, still very close with both of them. And, like I said, there were tough times, but we had everything we needed, and just small town environment. I grew up on a farm, but, went to school in a small town, like you said, high school class of 88. One of the benefits there is you really get to do everything. You can play any sport, you can, be in the school play. And so really took advantage of that, being in a diverse situation to be able to try different things. And then, yeah, from there, went to college, studied business, pursued a business career, have worked in finance, worked at a software company, and then ended up working in logistics and warehousing space, owned a business in that. That was out in California. We were out there. My wife's from California. Moved back home to the Quad City, which our opinion is just the best place to raise a family. I've got 2 daughters. They're 10 and 12, and just couldn't ask for really a better place to raise a family. It's amazing. And yeah, self-employed now, small business owner. I still do some work with businesses that are in transportation logistics. And then also my dad and I have a practice together as financial advisors. So that's what he shifted careers after hog farming, got into financial advisor. It's a real pleasure to get to work with him.
Was there a moment recently you kind of realized you wanted to get into politics? Something that changed or?
Well, I've always really been interested in politics. I've always followed it really closely. And I feel like these last 10, 15 years, we've just gotten to a really bad place. There's just a lot of toxicity in our politics. Things aren't getting done. Things are just getting worse in so many arenas and so many areas. And the politicians just aren't focused on solving problems. After this last election, just really felt like we needed to try something new. And then seeing where there's just a lot of numbers that align for this opportunity, where right now it's a record tight margin in the House. It's a 2-vote margin, where just a couple people could make a big impact. I would tell you that if there was a 20, 30, 40 person margin, I probably wouldn't be doing this, because you're just not going to have an opportunity to make a change. Going beyond that, like you said, 45% of Americans now identify as independent. Party approval ratings are all-time lows, 25, 30% or less. This district now, the largest group of voters, registered voters, are independent. That wasn't always the case. They've taken share from both sides. And I just think some of the issues that we're facing right now, we could get into that, are really, we're at a critical time where they need to be addressed.
Yeah.
And we're at a time where just a couple people could do that. And I said, it's time to raise your hand. And like I said, I've got kids. We've got to turn over a better country than what we're having right now.
Which one of those issues were kind of at the forefront of your mind right now?
Yeah, our fiscal situation is dire. I would say that issue, along with just congressional reform, which we can talk about both, are kind of key for me. On the fiscal side, we're $40 trillion in debt now. We're adding $2 trillion a year. It boils down to $90,000 a second. Each person in this country now has $120,000 of debt attached to them. We're paying more in just interest to service the debt. That's not even going towards that. It's just interest payment. We're paying more there than we're paying for our military. And at the pace that we're progressing on that, at some point that's going to lead to a real crisis. I would say like a depression level type crisis. And I tie this back to our affordability issues. That's the key word now in politics. The Republicans ran on that in 2024. Now Democrats are leaning into that. but neither one of them want to really talk seriously about the cause. I mean, from the start of our country in 1776 to 2009, 233 years, it took us to get to 8 trillion in currency and money supply. We've added 8 trillion in just the last 6 years. From 2020 to 2026, we've added 8 trillion. So when you just put more money in the system, things are going to go up in cost. I mean, housing, groceries, we could talk across the spectrum there. And politicians want to talk about all these other items. But that's the real, in both parts, this is a two-party problem. This has happened under both administrations, under, we could go back in time. And neither one want to address it. They want to blame other things, but that's the reason why we're having this affordability crisis. Going to congressional reform, we just got to change the way Congress operates. It's not functional now. It's the least productive Congress in history. And we have these really serious problems that we're just not addressing. They're abdicating power from the legislative branch to the executive branch. Congress was meant to be the first among equals. I mean, that was the core branch at the time of the founders. They debated whether even to have a president. I think our founders, if they were to come back and see how Congress operates, they'd just be sickened by it. And to change it, this is where we can get into some of the details here, but it all starts with the speaker, and that's where, to elect a speaker, you got to get the majority of votes. It's not just the most votes. You got to get 218 votes, and it could be a scenario where just 1, 2, or 3 people could deny either side a majority to elect a speaker, and that's where you could really try to get a speaker that's going to be focused on these nonpartisan, not Republican, not Democrat issues. I call them 80-20 issues, like getting a vote on term limits, the congressional stock trading ban, looking at mandatory retirement ages for politicians. A big thing for me, single issue bills. That's one of the real problems we have now, is these complicated bills where they try to tie 10, 20, 100 things into one bill, and it puts people in a position where, they really don't know how to vote because they like, 60% of the bill, but not. Why don't we have single issue bills, 2, 3-page bills? You could talk about that with the SAVE Act and voter ID. I think those are the kinds of things that we really need to do to make Congress function in a better way.
Why don't you think we have single issue bills?
I mean, I think a lot of it's, the way I look at the parties, they operate under instruction from special interests, which fund their campaigns. And obviously they, your run-of-the-mill congresspeople, they're operating under instruction from party bosses who are in turn working with special interests, right? And so that's what I would pin that to that. And that's where we're at a time where we just need people to be in Congress that want what's best for the American people. They want to represent the people of their district. So to me, it's a no-brainer why you wouldn't have single issue bills, right? A 1, 2, 3-page bill, whether they pass or not, that's fine. But why we're trying to do these 3,000-page omnibus bills that people get less than 24 hours to read it before they have to vote on it, go down the line on other bills, and it's not working. It's obviously not working. I think we all know it's not working.
And as for funding, or besides funding, I suppose, what issues have you kind of faced or hurdles running as an independent candidate?
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard to get a campaign launched. I mean, prior to deciding to run, part of me thought, why aren't there should be a ton of independent candidates running, because look at these numbers. I mean, the way half the country identifies, everyone's sick of party politics, right? But then when you actually get into doing it, man, there are hurdles. I mean, there were a lot of firms, vendors, looking at compliance firms, different things, where they're, oh, we love your message, we love what you're doing, but we'll be blacklisted by a party, and this is our business. And so just to get the bare bones infrastructure put together was a huge. I mean, honestly, we were delayed a couple weeks in launching. So yeah, I mean, you have that. Obviously the parties have just their infrastructure with the county level groups, like having a booth at the county fairs and county meetings, that kind of thing. Obviously we're building all this from the ground up. Fundraising, as you mentioned, that's where the parties just have such a stranglehold on money. But I think we're reaching a moment where that has less importance. I mean, just look at the Senate primary in Michigan. I'll say he got outspent 11-1, and he still won. I think things are changing this year.
You've talked a lot, or a bit, in other interviews and on your website as well, about clickbait politics. Would you be able to, I suppose, explain what those are, or how you see that?
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of that goes to what I call the culture war issues. It's a way that the politicians get their base really riled up. They fundraise off it. They get their, sound bites for social media. And it's a way really to divide us. And, whether that's kind of I would say like transgender would be one of those issues. There's issues like that where I think they get outsized attention from our politicians to just try to divide us and make us upset at each other. When in reality, there are these really big issues like the fiscal stuff, AI, Social Security, healthcare, that they don't want to talk about those issues. They want to have everyone focused on issues that just appeal to people's emotions.
Do you believe they're only appealing to their emotions? We did lose rights here in Iowa City. There has been a lot of debate about that. There was a point where we could protect people based on gender identity.
Sure.
And now legally they're allowed to be discriminated against in housing and jobs.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I mean, I'm a person that believes in limited government and individual freedoms. And so I think that's, other stuff like the book ban stuff. I wasn't just meaning that issue. I'm just saying some of these cultural issues, where I agree with what you're saying, but there's a lot of attention to that and little attention to some of these other issues that are like almost existential type issues, in my opinion.
In April, we had a shooting at our pedestrian mall where 5 people, including 3 university students, were injured. This has prompted discussion on campus about firearm policies, public safety, and Iowa's position as a permitless carry state. As an independent candidate running for Congress, what is your overall approach to firearm policies, and are there any changes to current federal law that you would propose, if any?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important issue, and like I said, I have daughters, kids that go to school every day, and it's an issue, like they go to public school, and it's an issue that's on my mind for their safety. I mean, we shouldn't live in a country where parents are afraid to send their kids to school. Obviously, what happened here in Iowa City was a tragedy. I've heard, and I don't know, I don't want to get too far in this, but I believe even one of the people that were shot actually signed our petition to get on the ballot. So it impacted me in a really personal way. Hearing that, I mean, horrible. I think, look, I believe in the Constitution. That's a core thing for me. And like I said, I grew up on a farm. I have, many friends that are hunters, that are sportsmen, people that have guns for self-defense. So I stand by that. But I think there's very much a middle ground here. And that's where red flag laws, focusing in on mental health, focusing on keeping guns out of the hands of people that really shouldn't have them. I think, again, this is an issue where if you leave this to just the parties, nothing's ever going to happen. They're so far apart. And this is where I think independents can add a lot of value in being a voice of reason in the room to say, guys, we need to get in a room, we need to sit down. We need to take an idea from this side and an idea from this side. And let's try to get something done, because doing nothing isn't good. I mean, it's not working. It's an epidemic we have in school shootings. I don't think either extreme is the answer. And so, and also just candidly, I think now there are more guns than people in the country. And so the idea of if you were to just do an outright ban of guns, I don't know what, that's going to really address anything. There just needs to be some common sense, like I said, mental health, red flag laws, background checks. We should be able to have some common sense to address that.
Right. Another issue is in September of last year, 3 plainclothed immigration officers tackled and detained a man while he was working at Bread Garden. Many in the community said this highlighted a lack of transparency and the dangerous environment created by the immigration crackdown. Along with a series of shootings nationwide, some of which connected to residents in Iowa City, residents here are extremely concerned for the future. What, if anything, would you propose to address these concerns?
Yeah, I mean, immigration is an issue where I think both extremes are failing us. That was a key issue in the 2024 election. And, a lot of people in the country felt like the Democrats didn't do a very good job. That was, and so I think that along with inflation were the 2 key issues that drove that outcome. Now we've swung the pendulum to the other side, where we're having the issue you just described, which is not good. We had the issues in Minneapolis. There was just an issue in Maine, I think last month. Neither extreme is the answer. And that's where I think, most people, again, common sense, we keep reusing that, but I think people want to have a secure border. I think they want to keep fentanyl out of our streets. But people that have been here, that are hardworking community members, we shouldn't be tackling them, harassing them. I think we should be going after violent criminals, people that, we shouldn't be here.
Would you support prosecuting members of ICE?
I think that's a case by case basis, And I think in some of these scenarios, they should, at a minimum, there should be investigations. At a minimum, it should start with that.
Israel has long been a top recipient of foreign aid from the United States, despite the fact that, according to a survey by the Associated Press, nearly one-third of adults in the United States believe that Israel has committed genocide in Gaza. With that said, I'd be curious to know your position on sending further military aid to Israel.
Yeah, it's a hot button issue, and I'll actually tell you that's a topic that has maybe surprised me the most since running for office. Being here in Iowa, I would not have expected that to be as hot button as it is. I hear that a lot. I mean, and from abroad, from younger folks, even I spoke at a senior center here in Iowa City, and that was probably 25% of the conversation. So I mean, it spans the spectrum. It's not just younger folks. I think, and I don't receive any foreign lobby money in this race. I think both of the other candidates do. So I'm again truly independent to try to represent what I think is best for the district. I think we should be focused what's happening here in the district and not as much on what's happening in the Middle East. But I'll tie this back to our fiscal situation. Like I said earlier, we're in debt $120,000 a person. And, looking at Israel, they have government funded healthcare, which we don't have. And they're only in debt about $35,000 a person. So to me, why we would be sending more money abroad, where, like you're saying, the issues we have here at home, that just doesn't make sense to me. Now, I'm pro-human in this. And I'm proud to say that in our campaign we have both Jewish and Muslim people working on our campaign. I think what happened to Israel on October 7th was not right. I think it was a tragedy. Also, what's happening in Gaza is a tragedy as well. And I mean, that's just where we need to get back to looking at people as people, whether regardless of your race, religion. We need to be doing what's right for all people. And Israel's gone too far.
If you are elected, you said you're not a politician on your website. How do you plan on staying connected with regular Iowans?
Number one, by going out and talking to them and listening to them. I think that's one of the big differences in this campaign is, we're getting out and talking to real people, and not, there's no safe space for an independent to go, right? Like the party politicians can curate their meetings and have their county party members and all of that. When I go up to talk to somebody, I don't know if you're far right, far left, in the middle. And so I think that's a real, and it makes it a challenge because you're going to get curveballs. You don't know what you're going to get, but I think it's also a strength in that, like, you can go talk to anybody. You don't have to just stick to a safe space. And to your question, I mean, that would be something after being elected, I would always want to stay in touch with the real people, going out. Like, I've been to 19 county fairs, talking to people at the fairs, just going out where people are and hearing what's on their mind. And the thing that's really interesting is that when you actually talk to real people, they don't fit in these party boxes of purity tests on 10 or 12 issues. They have their different ideas, whether it's on Israel and guns, and they don't just fall into the party checklists. And again, by not having special interests or a party boss to answer to, I think it enables me to truly stay in touch with where people are and not have anything to hide there.
Has there been a conversation that's really stuck with you recently with anyone?
Oh, man.
Or it's impacted you, I suppose, in any way?
One I would tell you is during the signature. I mean, I could give you several, but in the signature process early on, I was out actually on my own knocking doors in Davenport. Came across, it was a small kind of bungalow, and an older gentleman came to the door. It was kind of gruff and skeptical at first, and I started talking to him. And when I told him that I wasn't a Republican, not a Democrat, and kind of the message of trying to get Congress to work again, to bridge this partisan divide we have, he literally broke down in tears. And he was a Vietnam veteran. He was injured in the war, and he's I went and fought for this country. I was injured, and now I just don't even recognize this country anymore. This is exactly what we need right now. I mean, he even then took me to his neighbor's house to help me get more signatures. And it really, I mean, again, being a normal person running for office, not being a politician, having an experience like that where you encounter someone and they literally break down in front of you over what our country's going through right now, it really does inspire you to do this. We need this. I mean, if this is how people feel, we desperately need this. And I mean, I could give you other examples, but that was one that really did hit me. I mean, the other thing I tell you, just real quick, I mean, I talk to a lot of these county fairs. I go talk to the party county booths, and I talk to Republicans and Democrats at almost every fair. I've had Republicans that work there tell me they want to support me and vote for me. I mean, same with Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't want, I don't want to air anybody out on that, but it's interesting when these are people that are taking time. And the things I hear, oh, the representative, the other candidate, they never come here. They never come talk to people. Invited me to come to their county party meetings to talk. So even amongst the people that identify with the parties, there's a frustration with what's going on. I can't say that I would have expected that going to talking to some of these people, but it's been interesting.
Yeah, how is that? How many hours do you work in a day on this, I suppose? It must be tough to balance.
I mean, again, being an independent candidate, I mean, it is really a DIY thing. I mean,
Yeah.
like even talking about going to parades and stuff, I'm there putting the signs on the truck, and it was with the team, right? Where I think with the party candidates, oh, you just show up at this time. It's all the red carpet rolls out. And I mean, this is truly you wear all hats in terms of what you're doing, which is great. It's a great experience. And I don't know what the other experience is like, so I don't know to compare it. But I mean, honestly, it is a 7-day-a-week job, and it's the last thing you think about when you're going to bed. It's the first thing you think about when you're waking up. I mean, to put it in perspective, I've been to 19 county fairs. I've been living on fried food and lemonade shake-ups. And since launching the campaign, I've lost over 10 pounds eating a diet like that. So that just, I think, shows like the intensity of, some days we're 2-3 places a day. I mean, there was one day we drove over 400 miles in a day. I think since we've launched, I'm approaching 7,000 miles since mid-April on my car. So it's just nonstop everywhere, talking to people, doing interviews, doing everything. And for a normal person that's new to this, it's just a big learning curve.
Would you have any advice to students who feel maybe like getting into politics is hopeless these days?
I'm glad that you asked that, because that was another thing I heard a lot. When we got we got over 3,500 signatures in 40 days doing it in-house. We didn't hire a firm. We did it on our own, build a team. So we must have had at least probably 10,000 conversations. And that was one of the things that scared me the most. And just the other night, I was at National Night Out in Eldridge 2 nights ago, and someone I talked to, oh, this politics doesn't impact me. It doesn't matter what happens. I've heard a lot from people, especially in rural areas, of just, I'm dropping out of politics. It doesn't matter, regardless of who wins. It doesn't change for me. And it really is what you're getting at being hopeless. And what I would say is, especially here on campus, we're in a time where 15 or less districts are even competitive anymore in our politics. There's 435 seats in the House. Mm-hmm. Around 15 seats are competitive. We're at a moment where just 2 or 3 independents could truly change how Congress functions. We could have a say on the speaker. We could have a say on these rules. We could get single issue bills. We could get a vote on term limits, things that could really make a big difference. And so to college students, especially here in Iowa, you're in one of the few places in the country where you could really represent your generation. There's a lot, if you're at a campus in some of these other states, I could see why you would feel that way, because the outcomes are predetermined based on all this gerrymandering and all this stuff that drives us all wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here in Iowa, that's not the case. This is the closest district in the country. It was decided by less than 800 votes in the last election. It was decided by 6 votes in 2020. And the largest group of registered voters are independent. This is a place where you can make a real impact nationwide.
Going back to another issue, we've seen a scaling back of many DEI programs nationwide, especially here in Iowa. We saw kind of Kim Reynolds really help lead the charge in eliminating some of those programs, and no doubt inspired and helped by the federal government. With that said, what role do you believe the federal government should have in policing diversity initiatives in higher education?
I don't think they should be policing it. I'm not running on, I guess that's not a core issue for me that I'm running on, but I don't think the federal government should be policing it.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that's one of those kind of clickbait issues?
Yeah, I think it falls into that, where it really does rile people up. And again, this is what I'd say. Look, to people that are looking at me, maybe pick 10 issues and maybe say you disagree with me on 7 issues or 6 issues or whatever. But if a core issue is just getting government to function again, just having a Congress that's functional, like maybe set aside some of these issues that you would not agree with me on and focus on, because look, just being candid, and I'm not here to run a negative campaign against the other. I think we have too much negativity in our politics. I want to restore decency to politics. That's something important to me. At the end of this race, like I said, I have two kids. I want to be able to look them in the eye and feel like we did this the right way, in an honorable way. So I'm not looking to get into negativity and whatnot. But, at the end of the day, the other two candidates are more or less just rubber stamp votes for, what I would call a party boss, whoever the Speaker of the House is, whoever, over these, this is a 3-time rematch. I mean, $40-50 million on each side will be spent to elect them over these 3 cycles or more even. And that's where it's like, how could you truly just be running to represent people when there's that much money involved? And so regardless of some of these issues, not to throw shade at that in any way, but we need to start focusing on having people that are running to represent people, not special interests, and to get with the goal of getting Congress to function again, getting people in a room to solve problems. I mean, whoever's elected this year in the Senate race, if nothing's done with Social Security, there's going to be a 25 to 30% mandatory cut in 2031 if they don't do anything. They're not even talking about this. They want to talk again. They want all these other things they want to talk about. That's a serious issue, and especially for younger generation. We have to address Social Security, or it's not going to be around.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of the money or kind of the kitchen table issues.
Kitchen table. I mean, not to say these other things aren't important, but when you look at our fiscal situation, which is strangling our country and what's driving our affordability crisis because of all this money printing to fund the debt, when you look at our healthcare system, and now we can get into that, when you look at Social Security, I mean, and they're passing bills on daylight savings time. What's going on? It's a mystery to me.
Yeah. You've spoken a little bit about AI too, and
I forgot it. I mean, shoot, that's up at the top of the list. It's a big, sorry.
What kind of issue would you call that, or where would you position that?
I would say that's an existential issue.
Okay.
To our country. I think if we don't handle that right, there's some very scary outcomes. I mean, not to be a doomer per se. I know that's a whole thing, but when you hear what even some of the AI CEOs and founders of companies are saying about it, it's something that we really got to get right. And I look at social media, how that was handled. I look at both parties at different times, just took the special interest money on that, and they never did anything. But Democrats had a chance to address that. They didn't. Republicans have had a chance to address that. They haven't. And I think the same thing's going to happen with AI if it's left to the parties, because there's so much money involved. There's so much money in AI now that if we don't get independents in there that are actually just trying to do the right thing for our communities and for our people, I think the parties are just going to take the big money and let them do it, let them effectively regulate themselves. As we talk about AI, I mean, on one hand, you have just the societal issue and this is a real big issue for, college students, of unemployment, right? I mean, I think college graduate unemployment, it's like the worst it's ever been, or even worse than it was during the 2008 financial crisis. And a lot of folks are underemployed, not just not being unemployed, but, getting a college degree and then not even getting a job within your profession. We've got to, I don't think, are the politicians, do they care about that? From what you see out in Congress, do you see anybody focused on this? I don't see any. I don't see it. You could talk about the data centers, how that's impacting our communities. I mean, AI is a really complicated issue. I do think there's a needle to thread, because on one hand, we don't want to be behind China and Russia and places like that. We don't want to just cede them to be the leaders. But at the same time, we can't just look at AI with what's best for the companies and the founders and the people, running the show. We've got to look at how it's impacting people in places like Iowa and around the country. And right now, I just don't think there's any attention to that at all.
Is there anything you'd propose specifically for handling it, especially maybe unburdening some of the communities that are near these data centers?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the data centers needs to be up to the communities. It shouldn't be. And actually, here in the district in Clinton, there was a massive data center proposal. Went to a city council meeting there, and the community impact was just astonishing. I mean, every overflow room was full. There were people waiting outside. The public comment was over 3 hours. People were in tears. I mean, it's a big, and it's not a partisan issue. It's people from both sides. And, again, in this race particularly, neither one of the other candidates even talk about AI. it's not even something that they're addressing, because again, I think they either are wanting to get the big special interest money, or they're afraid of special interest money attacking them. And so it's just that, hey, we'll just stay out of it. And it's like, this is one of the biggest issues facing the district, facing our country. And at the end of the day, we're going to have guardrails. We're going to have to, I think if the data centers are going to come into our communities, big tech's going to have to offer a lot more than what they are when you consider the impact on energy bills, the impact on water. It's just something where our communities really need to have a seat at the table that I don't think they have today. And that's where I would advocate for that.
Mm-hmm. If you want to,
towards the end, but
you can talk about the fellowship if you'd like. What is the fellowship?
yeah, so we just launched a campus fellowship for the campaign to be involved. We've got a great team that we've already built out, and like I was saying earlier, I mean, this, you were talking about students being hopeless for politics, and I sadly get why I'm getting asked that question.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way where you can get involved, and it's not a big commitment. It's 5-10 hours a week max. Being a part of our team, phone banking, calling voters, we're really looking to make this fun, getting out, having events, having pizza, having whatever drinks, just getting out, having a good time, knocking doors, getting around, staying in Iowa City, getting around the district, but just looking to really expand a team. And also a great thing for your resume, work on a congressional campaign. I'm going to be a part of all this myself. So it's not just, one thing I've said in this campaign, I'm not asking anyone to do something that I wouldn't do myself. So, want to just build out a great team of folks to get involved in the community. And, I'll tell you, it's something I've heard from our team. They've been amazed getting involved, going out and talking to people, hearing what people have to say. It brings it to real life. It's one thing when you see stuff on TV, when you follow politics. This is actually getting engaged, talking to real people, making a difference in a way that, again, Congress is the tightest it's been in the last 100 years, and can make a really, really big impact day one.
And where can people go to find out more about that?
So our website, bridgefordforiowa.com, we've got a link to that. Also our social media stuff on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We have, you guys aren't even on Facebook, right?
Not really, no.
Yeah, we got a TikTok and Instagram, and we've got information there. And so, yeah, check it out. Apply. I mean, we want to work with anyone and everyone. Like I said, we've got a diverse team. This is all about just trying to do the right thing, represent people, get government going in the right direction, bringing government back of the people, by the people, for the people. It's what it was meant to be, and we've gotten so far away from that. And it's now of the party, by the party, for the party. In George Washington's farewell address, he warned us about the dangers of party politics, of how they would usurp power from the people. And that's what we're living in 250 years later. I mean, look at our great leaders of this country. George Washington was an independent. A lot of people don't know this, actually. Abraham Lincoln, when he ran for president the second time, he didn't run as a Republican. He ran under the National Union Party. Teddy Roosevelt, one of my favorite presidents, he left the party to run, to start his own party, the Progressive Bull Moose Party. We're at a time where we all know party politics is failing us. I would just encourage students to get involved now. And I'd say, I'm all for. This isn't about me. This isn't about. Get involved in politics generally. If you feel passionate about Democratic politics, Republican politics, get involved, especially in a district like ours. Or I don't know how this works.
Is there anybody in recent memory as an independent that you find inspiring?
So I've been fortunate to get to know Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, and he's helped start this independent leadership council that's supporting candidates. And there's some just amazing candidates running around the country. There's a guy in Montana named Seth Bodner I told him when I last saw him in West Virginia, I said, man, you need to run for president. I mean, this guy, he was first in his class at West Point, Army Ranger, Rhodes Scholar. He was president of the University of Montana, and he resigned from that to run for Senate as an independent in Montana. So I have a lot of respect for Senator Joe Manchin. I know people on both sides might have disagreements with him, but he really did put principles over party. There were some items during the the last administration where our fiscal situation would be a lot worse off if he hadn't kind of stood up. I respect him for that. Senator John McCain from Arizona, he was a Republican, but his nickname was the Maverick. He still went with what he thought was right in a lot of cases. And again, with both of them, I don't agree with them on all issues, nor should we. I mean, look, I think it's really strange when we think that we need to agree on 10 or 12 issues. We're all people. We all have a different experience. As long as we're representing what our true beliefs are and our principles, we should respect that. And there's people on the right and people on the left I have respect for that are true to their principles. But the problem we have is that so many just are void of principles and they're just bought and paid for by special interests.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm looking to go to Congress to be willing to work with anyone, whether you're TSA on the left or you're MAGA on the right. If you want to solve problems and address them, let's get together, let's compromise, let's find a way to do it so we can actually pass legislation that can get to the president and be signed, versus we're living in now going from, executive orders on both sides that swing back and forth. We have a Democratic president, they put in executive orders. The first day they cancel all the old executive orders and they put in new ones. Then it swings, and then to the next president, the Republican, they cancel all those executive orders, put theirs in. There's no way, there's no predictability, there's no consistency. That has to be done via legislation, and that's where we need to have people in Congress that are willing to work with anyone. That's why, if you ask me, who do you not like? I'm not going to say any name of someone I don't like in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
When I get elected, I want to be able to go there on day one and have a relationship with 400 other people, regardless of if I think someone's crazy or this or that. I want to try to get things done. But to answer your, independent, I mean, George Washington was an independent.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty good name.
Is there a time in history you kind of look back on in American politics where you think things were more stable or more consistent, I suppose?
We had a lot more bipartisanship back in the early 90s. There was a lot of legislation that was passed. I'm going to answer your question a little bit different way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a concept called the fourth turning. Have you heard of that?
No, tell me.
So it's a book that was written in the late 90s by some historians, some professors. And it's looking at history in a cyclical way, versus in Western culture, we look at history more like in a linear way of like progress happening, the scientific method, things go in a line versus in a cycle. But actually in ancient cultures, Romans, other cultures, and ones that were disconnected that would have never even been able to meet each other, they looked at time and history more in a seasonal, cyclical kind of way. And in these different cultures, they actually looked at history moving in these 80 to 100-year cycles that sort of matched up with, roughly the longest age a human could live. And when you apply that to American history, it actually is an exact fit, where you look at the revolution in 1776, 250 years ago. That was a crisis period that we were in. It's a very uncertain time. If you go back to that moment in time, it was very unlikely that we were going to win that war. I mean, actually it was August of 1776, 250 years ago this month, that, 40,000 plus British troops landed in New York. They defeated, George Washington, the Patriots. They ran them out of New York all the way to Pennsylvania. Washington was down to 2,500 troops going up against the most powerful military in the world, had no funding. Their commission was going to expire, and yet they won, right? It was an unexpected outcome. You fast forward 80 years, exactly, you're in the Civil War. And again, I think if any Americans you would have surveyed prior to the Civil War, that the idea that slavery would be abolished, that would not have been thought as a likely outcome. Fast forward 80 years from the Civil War, you're in World War II, another crisis period. And again, uncertain outcomes there. I mean, that war was not by any means certain that America and the Allies were going to win. I mean, if the Nazis would have beat us to the atomic bomb, I think that could have ended up in a different way. Fast forward 80 years from that, where are we at? Literally right now. And I think it's hard to recognize when you're living through history, but we are in a crisis period now. A lot of historians peg it back to the start of the financial crisis, 2008. You go from there into some of this sort of populist politics, get into COVID. Now we're coming into AI. I think that could be sort of a peak issue for this period. But what I would say is, in all these prior crisis periods, there have been outcomes coming out of it that people thought were unlikely. And I think that's where actually independence could play a role this time around, where things have gotten so bad with party politics. I'm hoping that we break through, whether it's me or other candidates. Honestly, This isn't about me. This is about doing what's right for our country. And if we can break through and actually make an impact on our politics, and then the next cycle, more people are going to run as independents because they see that it's possible and what the impact that we're able to have. my hope is that we get 10, 15 years down the road and we look back and say, well, of course independents were going to win. Of course we were going to get away from party politics. Of course we needed to make these changes. Look how bad things had gotten. And I hope that it can help pull us out of this crisis period that we're in and into a better period. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm running. I said in the beginning, the country that we're going to hand over to my daughters, to your generation, it's not acceptable right now, and the parties aren't getting it done.
You don't think that having a bunch of independents might slow things down in Congress at all a bit? Or would it keep kind of the same?
I think if, again, what I'm talking about, going there from a mindset of compromising to get things done, to say, there's a good idea here, there's a good idea here, come on, where can we, and this goes back to, okay, maybe we disagree on 9 out of 10 issues. If we agree on one issue, then let's figure something out on that. Let's start somewhere. And I think right now in government, people go there, they just put on a red jersey, they put on a blue jersey, they stick with their team, they follow the instruction, and I mean, look, I can't blame them in the sense that if they step out of line, then they're going to get primaried.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, an example of that would be Thomas Massey. Not that I agree with Thomas Massey on every single issue, but he bucked his party, and like on the Epstein files, on some of the Middle Eastern issues, and look what happened. They spent $30-40 million in dark money to beat him in the primary, and now he's going to be gone. Independents don't have that issue. We don't have to run in a primary, and so we're able to stay true to our principles and not step out of line. And just to take that one step further, now the Supreme Court just this summer ruled that parties can now coordinate with basically unlimited amounts with politicians, and it's just going to make that even worse for if you're a party politician, it's going to be nearly impossible to step out of line to try to represent your values, your principles, your district's principles, because if you don't, you're just going to be ousted at the next primary.
Could you speak a little on the Epstein files too? And I know you mentioned it on your website a bit as well.
I mean, to me, again, this is, I hate to say, but somewhat common sense in that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course, we should be fully investigating that. No one should be above that. I mean, to this point in time, I don't think a single person has been prosecuted in the U.S. I think around the world there are some cases, but not in the U.S. To me, what is going on there? I mean, that's something that there should be no protection on that.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add? I suppose before we kind of wrap things up.
I really appreciate the time. And again, we're just at a moment in time where we really need to make change. I think we desperately need some change. Establishment politics are not working right now. The pendulum has gone back and forth from both parties. Things aren't getting better. It happens to be coinciding at a time where it's the tightest margin in the history, and these margins are likely going to stay really tight because of all the gerrymandering.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just get a few independents into Congress to really represent their district, the people of the district, to be free from special interests. I think we could see a massive amount of change in a short time, especially having a say in the rules and who the speaker would be. If there was ever a time to get involved in politics, we're at that moment now with these issues facing our country. And I'm just really honored to be part of this movement that's taking place around the country. I hope people out there, I hope students want to get involved. This is a time where we can really make a big impact and a big change. And I think we all know that needs to happen.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your time as well. This has been an interview with Micheal Bridgford on KRUI 89.7 FM. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks, man.